Good evening. Thank you for being here. If you are fans of Ravi Balasubramaniam, I'm not Ravi Balasubramaniam. He couldn't come, so that's why I'm here, right? So sorry to disappoint some of you. So my latest novel, Miss Laila, Armed and Dangerous, is I would. I don't want to repeat the synopsis because I just had a session where I said what it was about. So even though many of you wouldn't have attended that, somehow I feel very sheepish about repeating some things which I just said maybe 1 hour ago. So that is about, I can talk about one of the themes that the book deals with. We constantly in these political times, so somehow it's very political. Our times are very political. Just 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we all know people who seem to know nothing much about what's happening around. Many of us, or we know close friends and family who are protected from news and politics and all that. But now people know the names of finance ministers, people know the name of home ministers, people know the names of MLAs, people even know what MLA stands for. So this is a very new thing which is going on, and in the next 2-3 years, we are going to forget that a whole different world existed not very long ago. In fact, when I was with the Outlook magazine about 15 years ago, when I had hair and I used to go for haircuts to a place called Juice, I went there actually also to report for a story on how India's young don't know. So anyway, we should, maybe I'll just, every 1 minute I'll say shut up. And so the story was on how India's young don't know anything. I was still young when I did it, so I was kind of very cocky. And the girl who was cutting my hair, and I wanted to get a very human feel to it, and the girl who was cutting my hair was a Muslim, and she was a very efficient, very, very intelligent manager of this saloon. Though it was the first time I went to a very hip saloon, and I saw the washroom. I really thought it was a urinal, because I'd never been to that kind of a place where then someone told me it's for washing hair. But anyway, I was that kind of a person, and then she was saying very smart things about hair. I never thought anybody can say so much about hair. Then I told her, do you know who Narendra Modi is? And she didn't know who Narendra Modi was. And she was not pretending. She just, she's in a different world. I told her he owns Modi Xerox. She said, oh yeah, I know Modi Xerox. Yeah, And I would just walk into a college and I will ask them questions like, what is the difference between Republic Day and Independence Day and stuff. It's almost like jaywalking. And these were all, these are all smart students, and they didn't seem, because they were more interested in sending applications, going abroad, and their own problem. They all said, oh, there's so much corruption in the country. That's one thing. Then corruption, like, what are we corrupt about? They didn't know the details. And when you speak to them, sometimes you understand why some species eat their young. So. Just a few hours, just a few years after that, it's a dramatic change. I think when Anna Hazare decides, when there's some guy actually in Maharashtra, not many people knew who Anna Hazare was. Actually, that also something people forget. Only people who followed politics in Maharashtra used to know who Anna Hazare was. It's a very bad-tempered old man, in case some of you don't know, who likes whipping alcoholics. So he decides to come to Delhi and go on a fast unto death. And suddenly, the traction that he could gather was just phenomenal. Of course, my friends from the RSS were involved in generating the whole hysteria around corruption, because no mass movement is possible outside Kerala and Bengal without the help from my friends from RSS. That is one of my theories. So he sits on the pavement, and the news channels initially focus only on him, and they make it look like there's a huge movement that is going on. And it did become that movement. Eventually, when you see an investment banker with his daughter on his shoulder. Now, when a father puts a daughter on his shoulder, it means the guy thinks two things. Something important is going on, and I hope she remembers this day when I carried her on my shoulder. And they really thought that there was some great history was unfolding. And the young people, meanwhile, who only until recently didn't know what was going on, there was a lot of uncertainty around that time. There was an economic depression, and suddenly people, the Indian middle class, which celebrated Manmohan Singh for everything that he was, that he wouldn't speak, and he was kind of this, and he was not man, that he was a very regular guy. Man is an expression which I picked from once I interviewed Simi Garewal, and she spoke about some man in her past, and he was such a man. And I thought, what a beautiful way to describe a man, Just say it twice. uh, so so suddenly, when Manmohan Singh didn't change in 10 years, the Indian middle class changed. And suddenly they couldn't stand this guy. And when young people are feeling insecure, you know what they do? They read newspapers. And these guys are reading newspapers for the first time, and they say, oh my God, there's so much corruption. Look at the Commonwealth. What did we do? There's so much corruption. And so they all, I was just telling yesterday that if they wanted to know everything about corruption, they had to just ask Papa. It's like, have you taken or given bribes? Because there are only two kinds of people in India. Either you take bribes or you give bribes. So it's not a big surprise. How do you buy a house, and what do you think all the cash in your house is? But people decided to look at other people, because we know what corruption is in India is something which other people do. That is called corruption. And they all gathered, and then so this is the backdrop. To cut a long story short, I wanted to write a novel. Trust me, as a journalist, I was sick of topicality. I'm sick of anything which is contemporary. And I also believe that I'm really sorry to say that most of you are fooled by journalists into believing this is news, that is news. News is a fabrication. News is an invention, like on par with religion and many aspects of spirituality and other things. It is a fabrication. That this is important, that this happened. I think once a week, there is one thing which happens, which is news. Everything else, I'm sorry, it's because we also have EMIs. So we need to do something, So I resent topicality, and I have this beautiful medium called the novel, where within the structure of art, I can say anything, I can do whatever I want. So should I be topical in this too? And I tried to do something else, but then every time I would see the photograph of Modi, I know that this is fiction. He belongs in fiction. He's such a beautiful character in fiction, and I can't be an Indian and not write about contemporary politics. It is fascinating and it was beautiful. And eventually, of course, all characters in my book are fictitious, and any resemblance to real characters should make them introspect about their lives. So I couldn't help. I thought I'll just get this out of my way. I will just do this. But I'm also happy that I think this is just the background. Ultimately, it is about two girls and a man. And a novel, at the end of the day, you can talk about many things. It's very difficult to talk about characters, and that's why people talk about the background. Now, whatever I told you is just the background, but it is about a girl in her early 20s, and it is about a 19-year-old girl who belonged to two ends of the economic spectrum, and a man and a young man. All three are young people. I had so much fun writing young people, for a change. And the novel is what goes on inside the minds of characters in situations. So that's what it is. I'm sorry if this is what I'm supposed to do, because I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do, and I was just asked to just talk about my book. Yeah.
Do you want to open it up?
Yeah, sure.
Well, you're your own advertisement. Okay, it's really, you intrigue us enough to want to read your book. But I have a question for you. Please do not mistake me. But How old are you?
I'm 43.
Okay, in that case, one thing I'm around your age. The,
How old are you?
You don't ask a woman that. I'll hide behind that. But the thing is, I find that what people say always, the children of today are very different from us. I find that whatever I think, a young person would think, it's totally not what young people are thinking. For one thing, the social media has infiltrated every part of their life, and they are very different because our exposure was limited. Theirs is infinite. So I don't know whether when I write about young people, I'm not very sure whether I'm really echoing their voice. What do you think about that aspect?
Yeah, most of novel writing, in fact, one of the most underrated aspects of literature is conjecture, is guessing. And writers are separated, like there's a lot of writers tend to talk a lot about research, but I think research is overstated. Yes, you do a bit of research. As in, you have to know zebras have black and white stripes, kind of knowledge like that. But then some people research and they go on and on about the research because they spend so much time with it. But actually, the most important thing is, or what is talent? I think everything else. There's a lot about writing is about social networks and where you are, your connections, and your upbringing. But when we talk about talent, I think it chiefly intuition. The intuition of the writer is it's what you're born with. Either you have it or you don't have it, and the ability to guess circumstances that you have not been in, without being condescending. That is why all the virtues are very useless. People talk about a lot of virtues like writers are decent, moral, and all that. And when you get to know the writers, you'll always surprise. Like for example, I always say you don't know a love poet until you've spoken to his ex-girlfriend. You will be shocked. You would not be able to read his poems after that. But I can see his position also, because you have a certain moral front. But when you're writing, you have to be ruthless with your opinion. All those virtues like decency, morality, doesn't help in guessing another person, trying to get inside the mind of a person. It's a psychological battle between you and the reader, and which you have to elegantly lose, where eventually the reader feels that she is in it and it is about her. So that is the. So about young people coming to this. Uh, you're right. There are a lot of things you can't know unless you are in that time. You can't even say I was young once, and it's like our parents used to say, I was 15 once, and I always use that as such a stupid analysis. It's like obviously you've been 15 once. It's like, but what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It was one of those things like teachers also say, if you forgot the homework, did you forget to eat? I could never understand the connection. What's the connection between, similar to that. Obviously, you've been 15 once, but then this is a different kind of, obviously, so that. But then there are a lot of things that you can still use the sheer power of conjecture to, and you have to really look at many things. And sometimes when you interact with the young people also, you can, of course, they put up a front, they're kind of big charades. But you can see through many things, and you can ask questions, and the answer is not about the answer always. It's how people answer gives you more about what they are thinking. But I feel that like you can have, like I do feel that young people are cowards, for instance. That it's a fellowship of cowards, that they claim to be rebels. See, having sex in the back seat of your papa's car is not rebellion. That's called having sex in the back seat. So when it really matters, they have so much at stake. It is also poignant and beautiful. They have so much at stake that they are not able to be courageous all the time. They're always oppressed by peer pressure. See, that's why they talk so much about Modi and politics now. They've got something to claim courage easily. you know. While that doesn't, they know that Modi doesn't know where you live. So they can say what they want and say that, yeah, I believe in that. Or, but that's why I keep pushing young people. It's like, take on your friends, then you'll be as lonely as me, okay? That too partly. But still, I say that ultimate courage is taking on people who can affect you immediately when they're talking bullshit. You have to say that, no, I don't believe this. And I feel that there are a lot of decisions that they have to make, like careers. Now, it's such a confusing to see. When I was growing up in Chennai, it was very simple. You write IIT entrance exam. Simple, They see you in the cradle and they say IIT. And then you decide to do literature. They say, okay, you're either homosexual or you have a problem. It's a very clear distinction. Then women wanted equality. They say, you also go write entrance exam. Yeah. No, by my generation, I'm not as old as I look. So by my generation, women were not expected to. They do medicine, kind of. They feel there's more empathy there, or they also had to do an entrance exam. So everybody, the entire, with equality, everybody was a zombie. Everybody, I would just see these serious guys going in a cycle to brilliant tutorials with those notebooks. And they will just, after 1 hour, they'll come back as sad from brilliant tutorials. So, but now it is more confusing. Now it's the robotics, artificial intelligence, everything about science. And suddenly people are thinking art is also interesting, journalism is interesting, and there are so many things that they can do. So I feel for the country. Sometimes I feel I was very unlucky to have been young then, and it should have been more fun now with Tinder and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes after I interact with them for 30 minutes, I think I was young at the right time. It's fine. Yeah.
Hi, Manu. I have a couple of questions. The first one is actually from illicit happiness of other people. There's one. There are several lines that have really stuck on with me, but one in particular, where you say happiness is not a pursuit; it's an inevitability. That resonated with me to a great extent, although when asked why by my wife and a couple of others, I haven't been able to quite expand on it, aside from the fact that it's probably not sustainable to be unhappy for too long. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
No, it's always a tricky conversation between husband and wife, the matter of happiness, by the way. It's like, you're a very brave man, because I can tell you that the most suicidal moment in a marriage, if you're in a weak moment, you ask, are you happy, darling? You are screwed after that, It's a very risky question. But then it was fascinating. Before I come to the point, it was 1 year ago, there was a research in Britain of, I think, 1 million British wives. It's a huge survey asking them, are you happy? That was the question, are you happy in your marriage? And 87% of them said they are. So they give a very different answer to researchers and very different answer to the husband. So which is, there's a lot of things about happiness that it also depends on who's asking the question and how you feel at that moment. I don't think that they're lying. I'm sure that a wife would look at the face of their husband, and when the question is about happiness, maybe she feels that maybe not so happy. But when someone else is asking the question, when she look back at the other aspects, and maybe if you compare to, say, Donald Trump or something, he was okay, it's fine, it could have been worse. But yeah, happiness, in fact, I want to connect this issue of happiness with a larger issue which Elisa just touches upon, and it kind of consumes me sometimes, which is how we are colonized by language. And when we say happiness, we are willing to surrender a whole spectrum of very important feelings within us to a label. Just a word which is supposed to represent a lot of things. And it is against this word that we check. And then most of the time, maybe sometimes we think that we are not happy. We have never been happy. We've not been happy for 5 years. We're not going to be happy. But that is very cruel to ourselves. But it is just a word. Maybe if we eliminate the label, and we look at many other things within us as things which white people have not named, or the Sanskrit scholars decided not to name. Like, I've been challenging people with meditation, which annoying some people, good people, but I've been asking them, what is the proof that meditation exists as a concept? Because you ask for one person's definition of meditation, and then it is very different from, say, J. Krishnamurti's definition of meditation. Or some people have a view that meditation is some kind of a trance, while most people cannot achieve trance unless you twirl in one place for a long time or you take substance. Maybe some people do twirl, and they think they're getting somewhere. So I think labels are very dangerous. I'm not discounting all these powerful feelings that they stand for, but I feel that we are capable of much more, and we surrender these things to language, which is very. I think we need to. In fact, most of the time we want to be more colonized by language, but I feel that when we are alone, when we're spending time, we should also see how we can liberate ourselves from language and these labels. So, on the question of happiness in the conventional sense, of what you meant as something which makes us, or something which is resembling joy, I feel that, it is a drug. It is not going to leave you, unless there are some clinical conditions, which is different. In fact, that is what illicit is about people separated by psychiatric states. And in every age, one mental state will be considered abnormal, which would have been celebrated in some other age. In fact, the prophets and gods of some other time, if they had lived now, they would have been in some institute, shut away. But it never leaves you. I believe the happiness doesn't leave you, because life. That's how life makes itself more attractive. So that's what that sentence means.
I'm a big fan of your article in Mint Lounge that you keep writing. So I find them very provocative in the sense that so if everyone's talking about the benefits of running, for example, you say that running is not for everyone. Or you say that, people just do it because it's a fad. Now, it takes a lot of courage to write stuff like that. And I want to know how you sort of developed that.
Okay. On the issue, it's an interesting subject on a column being provocative, and I swear that I don't want to be provocative, but it is just that honestly I don't see why most columns exist. Where, for example, I feel that you should not eat babies, never eat babies. I'm on the same moral plane. Will I write a column arguing for 1,000 words? Don't eat infants, they're very cute and it is very illegal. But most of the columns are that. They are arguing a moral point, which is very obvious to me, where there's like, there should be no corruption. It's like, I don't see a column. So the subject that you choose for a column should also be an ambiguous area where there is a need for an argument. Like if you're in Saudi Arabia, I think it is a great column to argue why women should drive. But if you're in India, if you're going to write a column on how it's horrible in Saudi Arabia that women are not allowed to drive, I think it's a waste of space. It is just virtue signaling, and there is a lot of... I really don't think you're interested in knowing that I'm a very good person. And I don't think I should use journalism to tell you that I'm a very good person. I think I should use journalism to argue. As long as it's good, it's going to last only for 5 years. So I just want to argue ambiguous points, So that is what I try to do. On the matter of running, what I was arguing is that it's most of that, like I run myself, I'm obsessed with it. But most of that 20, 30 kilometer, 50 kilometer, you kill people. You're going to kill people. I know that one newspaper did kill a poor old woman because before the Bombay Marathon, she was running. She was a very old woman and she was running in a sari. It was a very photogenic thing. And they splashed her photograph. And without any training, she did the half marathon. She died. And I feel that there is a lot of unsexy thing behind many sexy things. You know that you need to train, you need to warm up. You know, your body might be different, your knees might be different. You know, what I was arguing is that ultra marathon endurance sport is not about health. It is a beautiful thing, and like many beautiful things, it's a kind of an addiction. You know, so it's not in the health. So that was the context.
One last question. Anybody?
Well, in our real lives, all of us are shades of grey. But when you sit down to write and you sketch your characters, why is it only the good comes on the protagonist?
So I'm going to take a guess that you have not read my novels, which is yeah. So I agree with you. In fact, I agree with you entirely where the writing as a moral craft and this whole thing, I think readers are much smarter than the establishment. So the establishment and this whole thing that makes it look like, you know, there is a certain things that literature should talk about. But then, you see, in fact, literature is the only thing which talks about grey. You know, and literature is the only thing where there is space for weakness and misery and shades of grey. No other profession, or in politics, or certainly not investment banking, nobody is going to sit together and say that how do we justify this assholic behavior of this person? Only literature does, and I think literature does it. So I think in a certain kind of fiction, which is very simplistic, where you read it for the story, then maybe the complexity, there's no space for complexity. But in another kind of fiction, in fact, that whole game is that. You know, it reaches inside our own grayness and our own darkness, and we don't feel alone anymore. You know, we feel that we have other people who are similar to us.
Manu, we'll have to bring this to an
Great.
end
Thank you
now.
so much for
Thank
being
you
here.
so
Thank
much.
you.